Family dramas have played out across every era. The scenery changes, but the feelings remain the same. Today is a story about one of those timeless struggles. The July morning was thick with humidity and completely still. Kamari stood on the porch, hugging her youngest daughter, Amandla, who just wouldn't let go of her mother. Her oldest son, Kwame, had already climbed into the SUV and was deep into a game on his tablet. Her husband, Lathan, was loading the last few suitcases into the trunk. "Mom, please come with us," 6-year-old Amandla whined, wrapping her arms around her mother's neck. "Grandma's house is boring without you." Kamari kissed the top of her daughter's head, which smelled like coconut hair oil and sunshine. "Sweetheart, I need to get the house in order. You're only going for a week. When you get back, everything will be spotless, and I'll have a fresh sweet potato pie waiting for you." Lathan slammed the trunk shut and walked over to them. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a touch of premature gray at his temples, he had hardly changed in their 12 years of marriage. If anything, he'd just grown quieter, more withdrawn. Kamari chalked it up to his job as a senior project director for a major construction firm. There were always sites to visit, contracts to sign, and issues with suppliers. "Are you sure you won't come?" he asked, taking the girl from her arms. "My mother would love to have you." Kamari shook her head. Her mother-in-law, Ms. Eloise, had never truly been happy to see her. She tolerated her, sure, but in all these years, she never quite forgave her son for marrying a city girl with too much attitude, as she had once whispered when she thought Kamari wasn't listening. "No, I'm better off here. I've got so much to catch up on. I need to clear out the storage nooks, wash the windows, and get the curtains cleaned. I've been meaning to do it for months." Her husband nodded, and for a second, Kamari thought she saw a flash of relief in his eyes. She quickly brushed the thought aside. 12 years, 2 kids, a mortgage, and plans for a summer trip to the vineyard. Stop overthinking, she told herself. The car pulled away, disappearing into the shimmering heat haze rising off the asphalt. Kamari stood there for a minute, watching the road, then went back inside. The silence hit her like a warm wave. It was an unfamiliar, almost physical silence. When you're a mother of 2 working part-time as an accountant, silence is a rare luxury. Kamari went to the kitchen, brewed some coffee, and sat at the table, simply enjoying the strange sensation of being alone in her own home. The house wasn't huge, but it was cozy. 4 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, and a sunroom. They'd bought it 8 years ago when Kwame was just a toddler. Lathan had received an unexpected inheritance from a grandfather he barely knew, and the money had been enough for a solid down payment. Kamari finished her coffee and stood up with purpose. No more sitting around. She made a mental checklist. First the overhead storage, then the windows, then the garage. Lathan always piled things up in there, and she never had the heart to throw them out. The storage nooks were located in the hallway, tucked right under the ceiling. Kamari brought over the stepladder, put on an old head wrap and some rubber gloves, and opened the small doors. A cloud of dust that seemed a century old came raining down. There was everything in there: old Christmas ornaments, boxes of shoes that should have been tossed years ago, a broken vacuum, a kid's bike with a bent rim, and stacks of old tech magazines that neither she nor Lathan ever read. Kamari methodically pulled things out, sorting them into 3 piles: toss, donate, and keep. The toss pile was growing at an alarming rate. By noon, she had reached the very back of the nook, a spot she hadn't looked into since they moved in. There, behind a layer of old moving blankets and a suitcase with a broken handle, she found a strange cardboard box sealed with heavy tape. There was nothing written on it. Kamari climbed down the ladder, holding it carefully. It wasn't heavy, but it wasn't empty either. Something inside shifted with a quiet thud. She sat on a stool and carefully peeled back the tape. On top lay a stack of photographs. Kamari took the first one, and the world around her seemed to freeze. The photo showed Lathan, young, maybe 25. He was hugging a woman with dark skin, large eyes, and a small beauty mark above her lip. The woman was laughing, her head tilted back. On her finger, a ring caught the light. Kamari's breath hitched. She had met Lathan when he was 32. He had told her then that he had never been married, not once. She started flipping through the photos. There were dozens of them. Lathan and this woman at the beach, Lathan and the woman at a formal dinner, Lathan kissing her cheek, the woman holding a newborn baby, with Lathan standing beside her, holding a bouquet of lilies. A baby. Kamari's hands shook as she took the next photo. A little boy in a blue onesie. On the back it said, Tariq, 3 months old. Kamari felt her fingers go numb. She dug deeper into the box. There were documents. A marriage certificate between Lathan Kellen Gable and Ifeoma Diane Vance. The date was 15 years before she and Lathan had even met. A birth certificate for a child, Tariq Kellen Gable. Father, Lathan Kellen Gable. At the bottom of the box lay an envelope held together by a rubber band. Inside was a stack of handwritten letters in a beautiful script. Lathan, I can't live like this anymore. You're always at work, coming home after midnight smelling like someone else's perfume. I'm tired. I know I've gained weight since the baby, but does all our time together mean nothing? Does our son mean nothing? Kamari pressed her hand to her mouth. She kept reading, even though every word burned like hot lead. Lathan, I know about that woman. Your mother told me. Yes, Miss Eloise. She thinks I should know the truth. She said you're planning to leave. Is it true? Are you really going to walk out on me and an 8-year-old boy for some accountant? An accountant? Kamari was currently working part-time as an accountant. Years ago, she had worked full-time at the same construction firm where Lathan was a foreman. The room began to spin. Kamari gripped the edge of the table, fighting the nausea rising in her throat. Lathan wasn't single when they met. He was married. He had a son, an 8-year-old son who was almost the same age as Kwame was now. Where was this woman? Where was this child? Kamari looked at the date on the last letter. It was written 6 months after her own wedding to Lathan. I won't write to you anymore. You've made your choice. But know this. Tariq will never forgive you, and I won't either. You killed our family. You killed me. I hope your new wife never finds out what you're capable of. Kamari sat motionless, clutching the letter. Outside, the birds were chirping. The sun flooded the room with golden light. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower hummed. An ordinary summer day, an ordinary life. Except that life had suddenly turned out to be something completely different from what she thought. She didn't know how long she sat there, maybe an hour, maybe 3. The sun moved and the shadows in the room grew longer. She just kept sitting there, rereading the letters, looking at the photos, trying to piece the fragments into a whole picture. Ifeoma was beautiful, truly beautiful, not like a plastic doll, but a warm, vibrant woman with intelligent eyes and a soft smile. In one photo, she was standing in a garden holding a ginger cat, looking off camera, probably at Lathan, who was taking the picture. There was so much love in that look that Kamari felt a sharp, bitter sting of jealousy, absurd, late, and meaningless. Then another thought came, one that stole her breath away. If Lathan had lied to her about his past, what else had he been lying about all these years? Kamari stood up and paced the room. Her legs felt weak, like she was recovering from a long illness. She went to the sideboard where their family photos stood. Their wedding, Kwame's birth, Amandla's first steps, their vacations, a happy family, a perfect picture. A lie. All of it was a lie. She remembered how they met, a company holiday party. She had just started at the firm. He asked her to dance. He told her he'd noticed her for a long time. Kamari was young then, naive, fresh out of college. She was flattered by the attention of an older, successful man. "Are you married?" she had asked, because her mother always told her to check the ring finger first. "No," he had replied easily, without a second's hesitation, free as a bird. And yet, a wife and an 8-year-old son were waiting for him at home. Kamari grabbed her phone. Her fingers trembled as she typed Ifeoma Vance into the search bar. Thousands of results. Nothing specific. She added Gable. Still nothing useful. Then she tried Tariq Gable and froze. The very first link led to a social media profile. A young man, 20 years old, the age matched perfectly. The profile picture was a bit blurry, but the resemblance was undeniable. The account was private, 20 years old. When she and Lathan met, this boy was 8. Now he was a grown man, living somewhere, working, maybe starting his own family, with no idea that his father had other children. Or maybe he did know. Kamari put the phone down. She needed to think, to calm down, to process everything. But her thoughts were darting around like panicked birds. She went back to the box. At the very bottom, under the letters, was one more object, a small velvet jewelry box. Kamari opened it and saw a ring, a thin gold band with a small sapphire. Ifeoma's wedding ring? No. Wedding bands are usually plain, maybe an engagement ring or a gift. Why was it here? Why did Lathan keep all this instead of burning it, destroying it, forgetting it? And then it hit her. Her mother-in-law. Ms. Eloise knew. In the letter, Ifeoma had written, "Your mother told me." So the mother-in-law had been in on it from the start. She knew her son was married when he started his affair with Kamari. She knew, and she stayed silent for 12 years. That was why she never accepted Kamari. Not because she was a city girl, but because in Ms. Eloise's eyes, she was the other woman, the homewrecker. Kamari gave a bitter laugh, and to think she had tried so hard. Lord, how she had tried to please that woman. She'd made recipes from her kitchen, tolerated endless remarks about how she was raising the kids wrong, listened to lectures on how to keep a house, all for the sake of peace, for Lathan, for the children. And all that time, her mother-in-law had looked at her like a thief who had stolen another woman's husband. Suddenly, her phone rang. Kamari jumped. It was Lathan. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She stared at his name, unable to answer. What would she say? How could she talk to him, knowing what she knew? The phone went silent. A minute later, a text came through. "We made it safe. Kids are in the pool. Mom says hi. Call me when you're done cleaning." Mom says hi. Kamari imagined them sitting on Ms. Eloise's patio, drinking sweet tea. The kids running through the yard, an idyll. And here, in this empty house, everything she believed in was turning to ash. She didn't call back. Instead, she wrote a short text. "Good. Busy cleaning. We'll talk tomorrow." Then she turned off her phone. She had to act. Sitting around feeling sorry for herself wasn't an option. Kamari packed everything back into the box and hid it in the back of her closet under a stack of linens. Then she washed her face with cold water and looked at herself in the mirror. 38 years old, 2 fine lines between her eyebrows, the first few grays she carefully dyed, the tired eyes of a woman who had spent 12 years building a house on sand without ever knowing it. She had to find the truth, all of it. Kamari went back to the computer. If Tariq Gable was on social media, Ifeoma had to be too. She searched for a long time, clicking through dozens of profiles until she finally found a woman of the right age, with the right name. The profile was public. Kamari's eyes hungrily scanned the photos. Ifeoma had changed, of course. Years had passed. Her hair was tinged with silver. She was a bit fuller, but she was still recognizable. The same beauty mark, the same intelligent gaze. In the most recent photos, she was pictured with an older woman labeled Mama, and a young man, Tariq. Kamari scrolled through the feed. Ifeoma worked as a music teacher at a middle school. She loved cats. She had 3 of them. She posted photos of flowers from her garden, recipes for baked goods, and funny videos. An ordinary woman, an ordinary life. Not a single mention of her ex-husband, not one photo with him, but plenty of photos with her son. Tariq was in college, studying to be an engineer. In one shot, he was hugging a pretty girl. A girlfriend, or maybe a fiancé. Kamari stared at his face for a long time, looking for a resemblance to Lathan. She found it in the shape of his eyes, the curve of his chin, the way he tilted his head to the side. This could have been her stepson. He should have been if Lathan hadn't lied. They could have known each other. Kwame and Amandla could have known their big brother. Or maybe not. Maybe Ifeoma would never have accepted the woman her husband left her for. Maybe Tariq would have hated the children born of his father's second marriage. Kamari closed the tab. Her head was pounding, and a lump formed in her throat. She went out to the porch and sat on the steps. Evening was falling over the neighborhood in soft shades of purple. The streetlights flickered on, and a dog barked somewhere nearby. The world kept moving, oblivious to the fact that for one woman, it had just turned upside down. What now? Call Lathan and scream? Stay quiet and pretend? Leave and take the kids? The kids, Kwame and Amandla, they loved their father. To them, he was a hero, strong, reliable, the one who would always protect them. How could she look them in the eye if she destroyed that faith? And another thought, a low, unworthy one. If she left, where would she go? On her part-time salary, she couldn't even rent a one-bedroom apartment. Her parents were gone, and she had no close relatives. She was entirely dependent on Lathan. Financially, socially, emotionally. It had just happened that way over the years. She hadn't noticed how she'd become an extension of her husband. Kamari wrapped her arms around her knees, and for the first time in years, she sobbed. Not quiet tears, but a loud, gut-wrenching cry, like a child whose world has collapsed. The morning came gray and overcast, as if nature had decided to reflect her mood. Kamari had barely slept. Tossing in their empty bed, she'd gone over the facts, built theories, torn them down, and built them again. By dawn, she had made a decision. Before making any moves, she needed to know more. Every story has two sides, and so far she had only heard one, the one from the letters of a woman left behind. Maybe there was more to it. Maybe their marriage was already falling apart. Maybe it was Ifeoma's fault. Kamari knew she was grasping at straws, but she couldn't help it. 12 years isn't just a number. It's a life, children, shared memories. You can't just cross it all out in one go. She opened Ifeoma's social media page again. She scrolled through the friends list until she found the name she was looking for, Eloise Gable. Her mother-in-law was friends with the ex-wife, 12 years after the divorce, and they were still in touch. Kamari leaned back in her chair, absorbing the information. That explained so much. Ms. Eloise's coldness, her constant jabs, her refusal to ever be alone with Kamari. The mother-in-law didn't just remember the first wife, she kept a relationship with her. She wondered if Lathan knew. Her phone buzzed, a text from him. "Morning, sunshine. How are you holding up? Kids miss you, sending kisses." Sunshine. He always called her that. It used to make her feel warm, but now the word felt like a burn of pure falsehood. Kamari didn't reply. Instead, she got dressed, drank some coffee, and sat down to make a plan. If she was going to find the truth, she was going to do it right. Besides the photos and letters, there were more documents in the box. She spread them out on the table, studying every paper. The marriage certificate. The date was 15 years before she and Lathan met. He had married very young, at 23. Tariq's birth certificate, 2 years after the wedding, and then a divorce decree. Kamari frowned at the dates. The divorce was finalized 6 months before she and Lathan first met. They were divorced before that holiday party. She reread the letters. The last one was dated 6 months after her and Lathan's wedding, when Ifeoma found out he had remarried. But officially, they had already been divorced for 3 years by that point. The timeline didn't add up, or rather, it added up differently than she thought. Lathan wasn't married when they met. Technically, he told the truth. He was single, but he had hidden the fact that he'd ever had a family. He had hidden his son. It changed things, but it didn't change the core issue. He had lied. He had kept a 12-year silence about a whole chunk of his life, about a child who existed and grew up without a father. Kamari rubbed her temples. Her head was splitting from lack of sleep and information overload. She went back to the computer and searched for public court records. She entered the names Gable and Vance. A result popped up in seconds. A divorce case. Plaintiff, Ifeoma D. Vance. Defendant, Lathan K. Gable. Ground for divorce, adultery. Ruling, marriage dissolved. Custody to the mother. Father ordered to pay child support. Adultery. So that was why they divorced. Not because they grew apart, not because of irreconcilable differences. Lathan had cheated on his wife, and then he had married her, Kamari. No, the dates didn't match. The divorce happened 6 months before they met, so there was another woman, or several. Kamari felt the nausea return. She had always thought Lathan was faithful, reliable. He worked late, but it was construction, sites, deadlines, emergencies. She had never suspected him, never checked his pockets or his phone. What if she had been wrong all along? What if the pattern had just been repeating itself? No. She shook her head. She couldn't fall into paranoia. One mistake doesn't mean a life sentence. People change. They learn. Maybe Lathan cheated on his first wife but had stayed faithful to her. Maybe. She stood up and paced. She needed to do something with her hands, or her brain would explode. Cleaning. That would distract her. Kamari grabbed a mop, a bucket, and some rags. She started scrubbing the floors, furiously polishing every board. Then she moved to the windows, scrubbing the glass until it squeaked. By noon, the house was spotless. She was barely standing from exhaustion, but her mind was clearer. The facts were these. Lathan was married. He has a grown son he never mentioned. He divorced because of cheating. He married Kamari after hiding his past. The mother-in-law knew and stayed silent, and stayed friends with the first wife. The questions: why did Lathan keep that box? Why didn't he destroy the evidence? Was he still paying child support? Did Kwame and Amandla know they had a brother? The last question cut the deepest. If Lathan was seeing Tariq in secret, and he could have been, she would never know. It meant her children might one day run into a stranger who turned out to be their brother. The thought was unbearable. Kamari picked up her phone and dialed her mother-in-law. It was answered on the third ring. Hello? Ms. Eloise's voice was guarded. Hi, it's Kamari. Can I talk to Amandla? Oh, the daughter-in-law. There was the usual coldness in her tone. The kids are down at the creek with their father. Call back in an hour. Okay, thanks. She was about to hang up, but Ms. Eloise added, You cleaning up over there? Good. It was about time you got things in order. Something about the way she said it felt off. Kamari tensed up. Yeah, I'm clearing out the clutter. Found a lot of junk in the storage nooks. There was a pause. Short, almost imperceptible, but Kamari caught it. The storage nooks? Find anything interesting? The mother-in-law's voice had changed. It was sharper, more attentive. She knew. She knew about the box and was afraid Kamari would find it. Nothing special, Kamari lied, keeping her voice steady. Just old magazines and a broken vacuum. Ms. Eloise hummed. Well, I'll tell Amandla to call you back? The line went dead. Kamari stared at the phone, replaying the conversation. The mother-in-law knew, and she was probably calling Lathan right now to warn him. Or maybe not. Maybe she wouldn't want to admit she had kept the secret either. In any case, time was running out. If Kamari wanted to know more, she had to act now, before her husband came back and covered his tracks. She opened Ifoma's page again, and after a second of hesitation, hit the message button. Hello, Ifoma. You don't know me, but we need to talk. My name is Kamari. I'm Lathan Gable's wife. I'd appreciate it if you could find some time to meet. Her finger hovered over the send button. Kamari knew that after this, there was no going back. She would be opening a door that might have been better left closed. But hadn't she already opened it when she climbed that ladder? She hit send and leaned back, her heart racing. The reply came 2 hours later, just as Kamari was losing hope. Hello, Kamari. I've been expecting this message for a long time. If you want to talk, come by tomorrow at 2. I live in Willow Creek, 15 River Road. Just please, come alone. Kamari read the message 3 times. I've been expecting this message. What did that mean? Ifeoma knew about her. That much was clear since she talked to Ms. Eloise. But why was she expecting it? She wrote down the address. Willow Creek was about 40 miles away, an hour's drive. So all this time, Lathan's first wife had been living just a town over. They could have bumped into each other at a mall, a market, a doctor's office. Kamari shuddered at the thought. That evening, Amandla called, bursting with excitement about the creek, a frog Kwame had caught, and Grandma's peach cobbler. Kamari listened, the phone pressed to her ear, feeling her heart break with love and pain at the same time. "Mommy, when are you coming?" the girl asked at the end. "Soon, baby. In a few days. Do you love us? More than life itself, sunshine. More than anything in the world." Lathan took the phone next. He mumbled something about the good weather and fishing, then asked, "Is everything okay at home?" His voice was normal, calm. No hint of worry, no sign that his mother had called him. So the mother-in-law had stayed silent. For now. The night was spent in a restless haze. Kamari had strange dreams. She was running down a long hallway, opening doors one by one, and behind each one stood Lathan, but a different Lathan. Young in a wedding suit, older with a child in his arms, a stranger with cold eyes. In the morning, she woke up exhausted but determined. She dressed simply, jeans and a white blouse. She stared at herself in the mirror for a long time, trying to figure out what Ifeoma would see in her. A rival, a victim, an accomplice in her own misfortune? The drive to Willow Creek was quiet. Kamari watched the Maryland countryside roll by. An ordinary landscape, but today everything looked sharper, more vivid, as if she were seeing it for the first time. Willow Creek was a quiet green town. The houses were solid with big yards and gardens. She found River Road easily. It really did run along a small stream winding between willow trees. Number 15 was the last house, a blue wooden house with white trim and hydrangea bushes by the porch. On the porch sat a woman, the one from the photo, only older. Kamari stopped at the gate, hesitant. "Come on in," Ifeoma said, standing up. "I put the kettle on." Her voice was low and soft, not at all what Kamari had imagined. She had expected anger, bitterness, or snark, but she heard the tired calm of someone who had long since accepted and let go. They went inside. The house was clean and cozy, flowers everywhere, lace doilies, photos in frames. In one of them, Kamari recognized Tariq. He was in a graduation gown, holding a diploma. "That was last year," Ifeoma said, catching her gaze. "Graduated with honors. I'm proud of him." They sat at the kitchen table. Ifeoma poured tea and pushed a plate of cookies toward her. It all felt surreal. Two women who had shared the same man, sitting and drinking tea like old friends. "You found the box?" Ifeoma asked. It wasn't a question. "Yes, in the storage nook. I didn't know. I never knew." "I thought as much." Ifeoma took a sip of tea, looking past Kamari. "Ms. Eloise told me Lathan never said a word. I hoped he'd come clean eventually, but I guess not. You've been in touch with my mother-in-law for years. She's a good woman. She was just caught between a rock and a hard place. She loves her son, despite everything, but she didn't abandon me when it all went down." Kamari gripped her cup with both hands. The ceramic was hot, almost burning, but the pain was nothing compared to the storm inside. "Please tell me. I need to know the truth." Ifeoma was silent for a long time, then she sighed and began to speak. "We met in college. Lathan was 2 years older, handsome, confident. I fell for him instantly, completely. We got married as soon as I turned 22. 2 years later, Tariq was born." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "The first years were happy, truly happy. Lathan worked hard, built his career, but he always had time for us. We went camping, had cookouts, made plans. I thought it would always be that way. And then he changed. Slowly, subtly. He started staying late, getting annoyed at little things, pulling away. I blamed it on stress, on work. I didn't want to see what was right in front of me." Ifeoma put her cup down and laced her fingers on the table. "The first time I found out about another woman was when Tariq was 6. I forgave him. I believed his promises. Then there was a second, a third. Each time there were tears, vows, a brief period of peace, and then the cycle started again." Kamari felt her hands go cold. How many were there? I don't know. I stopped counting. At some point I realized it wasn't about them. It was about him. Lathan just doesn't know how to be faithful. He won't or he can't, I don't know, but being loyal to one woman is impossible for him. The words fell like stones, heavy and unmovable. The final straw was a girl named Sia. She worked in his department, young, starry-eyed. Lathan didn't even try to hide it. He took her to restaurants, bought her jewelry. Someone told me, and I blew up. He packed his bags and moved in with her. Sia? Yes. Lived with her for 6 months until she got pregnant. Then he ran. He was terrified of the responsibility. I heard she lost the baby. I don't know the details, and I don't want to. Kamari closed her eyes. The story was ugly, disgusting, and the worst part was that the protagonist was her husband, the father of her children. We got divorced, Ifeoma continued. I didn't want his money. I didn't demand anything. I just wanted him to leave us alone. He paid child support, I'll give him that, regularly until the very last day. But he barely saw his son. He'd come once a year for his birthday, bring gifts. Tariq waited for him at first. Then he stopped. Now, they don't talk at all. 12 years, Kamari whispered. 12 years of silence. He wanted to start with a clean slate. Probably hoped the past would just vanish if he pretended long enough that it didn't exist. Ifeoma looked her straight in the eye for the first time. I don't hold a grudge against you, Kamari. You didn't know. You're as much a victim as I was. But I have to warn you. She didn't finish. The front door creaked. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Mom, you home? A young man appeared in the kitchen doorway, tall, dark-skinned, with Lathan's face, those same eyes, that same chin. Tariq. He saw Kamari and froze. Who's this? Tariq, meet someone, Ifeoma said softly. This is Kamari, your father's current wife. Silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. Tariq stood in the doorway, unmoving, staring at Kamari like he was seeing a ghost. My father's wife, he repeated slowly. That one? Tariq. Ifeoma started, but her son cut her off. No, Mom, wait. He walked into the kitchen and sat across from Kamari. His eyes were cold and searching. I want to know why you're here. To apologize? To make excuses? I came to find the truth, Kamari replied, trying to keep her voice from shaking. I didn't know about you or your mother. I didn't know anything until 2 days ago. Tariq gave a bitter, joyless laugh. You didn't know? 12 years with a man, and you didn't know he had a son? Sorry, that's hard to believe. Tariq, she's telling the truth, Ifeoma intervened. Ms. Eloise confirmed it. He's confirmed. Lathan hid everything. Grandma. Tariq turned to his mother. You talked to Grandma? You know that? Yes, we never hid that. I know. Tariq rubbed his face with his hands. It's just weird. The three of us sitting here, drinking tea, talking about my father like this is normal. Kamari looked at him and saw Kwame, the man Kwame would become in 10 years. The same gestures, the same way of scowling. You can't cheat genes. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I truly am. I didn't destroy your family on purpose. When I met Lathan, he said he was single. I believed him. Technically, he wasn't lying, Tariq grumbled. He and Mom were already divorced, but he hid the fact that he'd ever been married, hid the fact that he had a kid. That's a lie, too. Tariq was silent for a long time, staring out the window. Then he sighed. You know what? I stopped being angry at him a long time ago. What's the point? He is who he is. You can't change him. You can only accept it and move on. How can you talk about it so calmly? Kamari couldn't help herself. He's your father. He abandoned you. Abandoned me, Tariq agreed. So what? Mom raised me. Grandma helped. I got my education, found a job, met a girl. Life goes on, with him or without him. Ifeoma put her hand on her son's shoulder. Tariq learned not to expect from his father what the man isn't capable of giving. It was hard, but he managed. Kamari felt tears pricking her eyes. This man, had gone through exactly what her children might have to face. Kwame, Amandla. How would they handle the truth about their father? You have children too, don't you? Tariq asked, as if reading her mind. Yes, a son and a daughter, 11 and 6. My brother and sister, he said thoughtfully. Weird. I always thought I was an only child, but I guess not. They don't know about me. I suspect not. My father isn't the type to talk about his past mistakes. Kamari flinched at the word, mistakes. To Lathan, his first family was a mistake, something to be hidden, forgotten, erased. I want to show you something, Ifoma suddenly said. She stood up, left the kitchen, and returned a minute later with a thick photo album. This is for you, or rather, for your children. One day they'll want to know the truth, and they should have the whole picture. Kamari opened the album. On the first page was a wedding photo, young Lathan and Ifeoma, happy, in love. Then, a chronicle of family life, holidays, trips, everyday moments, little Tariq in his father's arms, Tariq's first steps, Tariq blowing out candles on a cake. Why do you keep all this? Kamari asked, flipping through the pages. After everything he did. It's not for him, it's for Tariq and for history. You can't erase the past just because it hurts. The past is part of us, whether we like it or not. In the final pages, the photos became fewer. Lathan appeared less often, at first only on holidays, then he vanished entirely. Instead, other faces appeared, Ifeoma's parents, her friends, neighbors. People who filled the void left by a husband who walked away. He came for my 18th birthday, Tariq said, pointing to one of the photos. Last time, brought an expensive watch, stayed for an hour and left. Said he had business. Since then, he only sends money for holidays. Money? Kamari remembered Lathan occasionally withdrawing cash, explaining it as work expenses. Was some of that money coming here? He still sends it for New Year's and my birthday, Tariq confirmed. I don't take it. I donate it to a local youth center. Let it do some good for somebody. Ifoma stood up and started clearing the table. Kamari, I know this is hard for you, but you have to decide what to do with this knowledge. You can pretend nothing happened. Keep living like before. A lot of people do. And you? What would you do if you were me? Ifeoma turned, and in her eyes there was something like sympathy. I'd ask myself one question. Can I trust this man? Not just in general, but truly, deeply. To trust is to be vulnerable. And with Lathan, being vulnerable is dangerous. Kamari sat still, processing everything she'd heard. Trust. She had trusted Lathan unconditionally. She never checked, never suspected, never doubted. She was sure she knew him as well as she knew herself, but it turned out she didn't know him at all. There's something else, Ifeoma said quietly. She pulled an envelope from a kitchen drawer and laid it in front of Kamari. I didn't want to say this in front of Tariq, but you should know. Mom, what is that? Tariq frowned. Wait, son. This is just for her. Kamari took the envelope. Her hands were shaking again. Inside were printouts of messages, a chat history from a messaging app. Where did you get this? Ms. Eloise sent it a month ago. She found it by accident when Lathan left his phone at her house. Kamari started reading. The first message was dated March of this year. Miss you. When are you coming by? Next week. The wife and kids will be busy. I can slip away. I'll be waiting. I'll cook your favorite dinner. My beautiful girl. Love you. The letters blurred before her eyes. Kamari flipped through page after page, week after week. The messages spanned from January to June, 6 months. Who is this? She whispered. I don't know. Ms. Eloise couldn't find out. The number isn't saved as a contact, just digits. Kamari lowered her hands with the printouts. There it was, the ultimate surprise from fate. Lathan wasn't just hiding his past. Lathan was cheating on her right now in the present. All this time, while she was washing his shirts, cooking his meals, raising his children, he was with someone else. The story was repeating itself, just like with Ifeoma, just like with that unknown girl Sia, just like probably with dozens of other women no one would ever know about. "I have to go," Kamari said, standing up. Her legs barely held her. She had to lean on the table. "Do you want me to call you an Uber?" Ifeoma looked at her with concern. "No, thank you. I need to think." She walked out of the house without saying goodbye. The sun blinded her. The hot air scorched her face. Kamari walked down the street, oblivious to where she was going, bumping into passers-by, not hearing their annoyed shouts. Only one thought was drumming in her head. What now? What do I do now? Kamari didn't remember how she got home. She snapped out of it on her porch, clutching her keys. The sun was setting, which meant hours had passed. Several hours of blackness, emptiness, and a deafening roar in her head. She went inside and leaned her back against the door. The house met her with silence, the same silence she had enjoyed 2 days ago. Now that silence was crushing, suffocating her. Kamari went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it in one gulp. Her hands were shaking so hard the glass slipped and shattered on the floor. She looked at the shards and thought, "That's my life," shattered into tiny pieces that can't be glued back together. The phone in her pocket buzzed. A text from Lathan. "Why aren't you picking up? I'm worried. Call me." She hadn't noticed he'd called. Probably while she was driving, while she was wandering the streets in a daze. Kamari typed a reply. "Was busy. Everything's fine. Tired, went to bed early." She sent it and turned off the phone. A lie. She had learned to lie too. Turns out it's easy. You just have to start. She got on her knees and started picking up the shards of glass. One cut her finger, drawing blood. But Kamari didn't even feel the pain. The physical pain was nothing compared to the storm inside. When the glass was cleared, she stood up and went to the bedroom. Their shared bedroom, where she and Lathan had spent thousands of nights, where they had conceived both children, where they had whispered words of love and built dreams. A lie. Every word, every touch, every kiss. Kamari opened Lathan's closet and methodically began searching through his things. Jackets, shirts, pants. There was nothing in the pockets. He was careful. But she knew what to look for. The bottom drawer under the sweaters. That was where he kept documents he considered important. Kamari pulled out a folder and opened it. Car titles, insurance papers, some receipts, and another envelope, sealed, with no writing on it. She tore it open and pulled out the contents. They were bank statements from an account she didn't know existed. A separate account in his name, where money was transferred monthly from the main account, and from there, regular payments went to an unknown number. Kamari scanned the amounts. They weren't small, enough to rent a nice apartment or support a mistress. The transfers had been going on for 3 years. 3 years he had been siphoning money into a secret account. He told her his salary was tight, that the mortgage was eating everything, that they needed to save. And all the while, she kept searching. In the back of the drawer, she found another box, a small velvet one, just like the one in the storage nook. She opened it and saw a ring, thin, with a diamond. Brand new, according to the tag. It wasn't her size. Kamari wore a 6. This was a 7.5. A gift for another woman. Lathan had bought a diamond ring for someone else. Kamari sat on the floor, clutching the ring to her chest. The tears finally broke. Hot, angry, endless tears. She cried, rocking back and forth like a child whose mother had left for work and never came back. But her mother had been in the grave for years, and there was no one to comfort Kamari. She cried until dark. Then she washed her face, looked at her swollen reflection in the mirror, and made a decision. She had to find out who this woman was, find her name, her address, how long this had been going on, and then she would decide what to do. Kamari turned on the computer. She remembered the number from the messages Ifeoma had shown her. Her photographic memory had always been an asset at work. She typed it into a search engine. Nothing. The number wasn't linked to any social media or public profiles. The person was careful. Then she tried a different way. She opened the bank statements and found the account number Lathan had been sending money to. It was an account at a different bank, but the payment description was listed as a personal transfer. The recipient, Zolani Doroha. Kamari went back to social media. Doroha was a fairly unique name. She searched and found a result. Zolani Doroha, 32 years old, works as an administrator at a high-end fitness club. Kamari recognized the club. Lathan had been going there for 4 years. For his health, as he put it. She had been happy he was taking care of himself, had supported him, even bought him his gym gear. Xolani's page had many photos. A beautiful, striking woman with long braids and a bright smile. In one shot, she was standing by an expensive car. In another, she was posing at a fancy restaurant. In a third, she was sunbathing at a resort. And in a fourth, she was hugging a man whose face was cropped out. But Kamari recognized the shirt, the light blue one with fine white stripes. She had bought that shirt for Lathan's birthday last year. So it wasn't just a fling. It was a serious relationship if he was transferring money and buying rings. Kamari leaned back in her chair. Her head felt empty and hollow, like a bell. 3 years. 3 years he had been living a double life, splitting himself between 2 women, and she, the fool, hadn't noticed a thing. She had believed every word, every excuse. Suddenly the landline rang, an old phone they rarely used. Kamari jumped and picked up. "Hello? Kamari?" The voice was unfamiliar, female. "This is Zolani. We need to talk." Kamari froze. "How did you—" "Lathan told me about you. Not everything, but enough. I know you found his secret spot. Ms. Eloise called him, and he called me, in a panic." The mother-in-law hadn't held back after all. She'd warned her son. "What do you want?" Kamari asked coldly. "To meet. To explain. I know it sounds crazy, but there are things you need to know. Things that will change everything." "What else could change? I already know my husband is a liar and a cheat." "You don't know everything." Zolani paused. "Meet me tomorrow at the Oak Cafe in the town square at noon. Please. It's important." "Why should I believe you?" "You shouldn't. But if you want the truth, come." The line went dead. Kamari sat with the receiver in her hand for a long time, listening to the dial tone. Another meeting, another woman from Lathan's past or present. How many more would crawl out of the shadows? She put the phone down and looked into the darkness outside. Far away, at her mother-in-law's house, her children were sleeping. Kwame and Amandla, who had no idea their world was about to collapse. Kamari didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she understood one thing for certain. There was no going back. She had gone too far, learned too much, and now she had to see it through to the end. The Oak Cafe was located in an old brick building with high ceilings and massive windows. Kamari arrived early, sat at a corner table, and ordered a coffee she didn't plan to drink. Her hands were shaking, and her mouth felt dry. She had barely slept. She'd spent the night in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Zolani. There are things that will change everything. What else could change? How could it get worse? Zolani appeared exactly at noon. Tall, striking, in a form-fitting dress and heels, not at all like a woman coming to meet her lover's wife, but more like someone headed to a business negotiation. She walked to the table and sat across from Kamari. The waiter brought a menu, but Zolani brushed him off, asking for just water. Then she looked at Kamari. "Thank you for coming. I didn't have much of a choice. There's always a choice. You could have ignored me, could have told me to go to hell, but you're here. That means you want the truth." Kamari stayed silent, studying her rival. Beautiful, yes. Young, yes. Confident, absolutely. Exactly the type Lathan liked. She herself had been like that once, 12 years ago. "I'm not going to apologize," Zolani said. "I don't see the point. You wouldn't believe me, and that's not why I called you. Then why? Zalani took her phone from her bag and laid it on the table, screen up. Did Lathan tell you about his plans? What plans? So he didn't. She gave a joyless laugh. He's planning to leave you. He's been planning it for a while. He just hasn't pulled the trigger yet. Kamari felt a chill settle deep inside. She had prepared herself for this conversation, but hearing it to her face was a different matter entirely. And move in with you? That's the thing. No. Zalani took a sip of water. He's planning to leave both of us. I don't understand. I didn't understand for a long time either. I thought I was special, that he truly loved me. I believed his promises for 3 years. I'm getting a divorce soon. Soon we'll be together. And then I found out about Sia. Who? Sia Samoa, 26 years old, works at a real estate agency. Lathan met her 6 months ago when he was filing paperwork for a project. Zalani turned the phone toward her. That's her. On the screen was a photo of a young woman with a round face and naive eyes. She was standing at a beach in a swimsuit, smiling at the camera. That's from her social media, and this... Zalani swiped. This is a photo I took myself a month ago. The next shot was taken from a distance, clearly with a zoom lens. Lathan and that same girl were leaving a restaurant. He was holding her around the waist. Kamari closed her eyes. So it wasn't 2 women. It was 3. Her, Zalani, and now Sia. I followed him, Zalani continued. When I started noticing he was pulling away, lying more than usual, I hired someone to check, and I found out a lot of interesting things. She pulled a folder from her bag and laid it on the table. Everything is in here. Photos, messages, dates of meetings. Lathan was living a double life with me, thinking you knew nothing, and he was living a triple life with Sia, thinking I knew nothing. He's a master of deception. Kamari took the folder but didn't open it. She didn't have the strength to look at the evidence of more betrayals. Why are you telling me this? She asked quietly. We're rivals. You should be happy he's leaving me. I would be if he were leaving you for me. Zalani laughed bitterly. But he's leaving for her, for a 26-year-old girl who looks at him with stars in her eyes and believes every word. The way I once did. The way you probably did too. She fell silent, swirling the water in her glass. You know what the funniest part is? I was married too when I met Lathan. I left my husband for him. I thought it was fate, a great love, but it turned out to be just another turn on his endless carousel. I don't feel sorry for you, Kamari said, and you shouldn't. I didn't come for sympathy. Zalani leaned in closer. I came to warn you and to make an offer, an alliance. An alliance? Lathan thinks everything is under control, that we helpless women will just keep dancing to his tune, but we can unite. 3 women he lied to, you, me, and Ifeoma. You know Ifeoma? Now I do. Ms. Eloise introduced us. Your mother-in-law is something else. She's been playing her own game this whole time, collecting info, waiting for the right moment. Kamari shook her head, trying to process it all. Wait, Ms. Eloise knew about you? About Sia? About me? Yes, she's known about me for 2 years. She found out about Sia recently, from me. Zalani took out a cigarette, turned it in her fingers, but didn't light it. She hates her son. Did you know that? She doesn't show it, of course, but deep down she hates him for what he did to Ifeoma and Tariq, and for what he keeps doing. Then why did she stay silent all these years? Because Lathan is her only child. Because of the grandkids. Because she hoped he'd change, but when she saw the messages with Sia, when she realized he was going to walk out on you and your kids too, she snapped. Kamari remembered her mother-in-law's call. You cleaning up over there? Find anything interesting in the storage nooks? So Ms. Eloise had intentionally led her to that box, not by accident, not by mistake, on purpose. She wanted me to find out, Kamari said aloud. She wanted you to wake up, to stop being blind. Zalani finished her water. Ms. Eloise has spent the last 6 months building a file on her own son. Bank statements, recorded conversations, witness accounts. She wants him to walk away from the divorce with nothing. Why would she do that? For the grandkids. For you. And for justice, as she calls it. Zolani stood up. Think about my offer. We can meet, the three of us, you, me, and Ifeoma, and discuss a strategy. Together, we're stronger than we are alone. She laid a business card on the table. My number. Call me when you're ready. Zolani left, leaving Kamari alone. The coffee was cold, and the folder of evidence lay untouched. The patrons of the cafe chatted and laughed, living their ordinary lives, unaware that at a corner table, a woman was experiencing the collapse of everything she believed in. An alliance. 3 cheated women against 1 liar. It sounded like the plot of a bad TV show, but this was her life, her reality. Kamari opened the folder. Photos, printouts of messages, various documents. She flipped through page after page, and with every new detail, her heart turned more to stone. Lathan was renting an apartment for Zolani, paying for it from that secret account. Lathan took Sia to the same restaurants he once took Kamari. Lathan wrote the exact same messages to both of them, word for word, like a script. Miss you, baby. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. We'll be together soon, I promise. A lie multiplied by a lie raised to the power of a lie. On the last page was a scan of a document, a petition for divorce. Lathan had already filled it out. He just hadn't filed it yet. The date was 2 weeks ago. He was preparing to leave in secret, cowardly, without warning. He would have sent her and the kids to his mother's so he could quietly pack his things and vanish, but Ms. Eloise had intervened, called her daughter-in-law, and set off a chain of events. Kamari took out her phone and dialed the number on the card. Zolani, it's Kamari. I'm in. Let's meet. The meeting took place the next day at Ifeoma's house. Kamari arrived first, followed by Zolani. They sat in the same kitchen where 2 days ago Kamari had first heard the truth and waited in silence as the hostess brewed tea. It was a strange sight. 3 women of different ages, different lives, united by one man. Ifeoma, the first wife, betrayed and abandoned. Zolani, the mistress, who had once destroyed a family herself. Kamari, the legal wife, who had lived in ignorance for 12 years. Does Tariq know we're meeting? Kamari asked. He knows. He doesn't approve, but he understands. Ifeoma put the cups on the table. He said his father dug his own grave. Let him lie in it. Zolani tapped her nail nervously on the table. Let's get to business. Ms. Eloise gave me something important. She laid a flash drive on the table. These are recordings of Lathan's conversations. She planted a voice recorder in his room when he stayed with her last month. The mother-in-law was recording her own son. Kamari couldn't believe it. She was gathering evidence. Listen for yourself. Ifeoma brought a laptop and inserted the drive. From the speakers came a familiar voice. Lathan was talking on the phone. Yeah, everything's going according to plan. Kamari doesn't suspect a thing. I'll send her and the kids to my mother's. I'll tell her it's a business trip. During that time, I'll transfer the house deed to my name and file for divorce. A pause. The voice on the other end was muffled. The kids? Well, we'll have to split them. To be honest, I don't really need them. Amandla is still little, always whining. Kwame is better, but still. Let them stay with their mother. I'll pay child support, like I'm supposed to. Kamari felt something snap inside. He doesn't need the kids. Her children. His children. He didn't need them. Amandla, who worshipped her daddy, who would run to him and hang on his neck. Kwame, who dreamed of being an architect like his father. And the house? Lathan continued. I'm taking the house. I bought it. It's in my name. Let her try to fight me. I've got a good lawyer. Besides, Kamari won't sue. She's weak. She's afraid of everything. Weak. Afraid of everything. That was how he thought of her all these years. The recording ended. Silence fell over the kitchen. "That's not all," Zalani said. "There are recordings where he discusses his future with Sia. He says he'll buy her a condo with the money from selling the house, that they'll move to a different city and start a new life." "And what about you?" Ifeoma asked. "Me?" Zalani laughed bitterly. "Nothing. In one of the conversations, he calls me yesterday's news, says he's bored with me, that I demand too much." She turned away, but Kamari caught the glint in her eyes. Zalani was suffering too, in her own way, differently, but she was suffering. "What can we do?" Kamari asked. "Legally, I mean." Ifeoma pulled out a folder of documents. "I've consulted a lawyer, a good one who specializes in high-stakes family law. The situation is complicated but not hopeless." She spread the papers on the table. "First, the house. Lathan is right. It's in his name. But you've been married for 12 years. The children are residents there. By law, you're entitled to half of the marital assets. He said he has a good lawyer. Ours will be better." Ifeoma smiled. "Actually, it's the same one. I told him the whole story. He agreed to help pro bono. He says guys like this are a matter of principle." Zalani leaned forward. "Second, the bank accounts. Lathan has been funneling marital funds to support a mistress, me, for 3 years. We can prove that with the statements. A judge can take that into account when dividing assets." "And the recordings?" "The recordings are a gray area," Ifeoma admitted. "They might not be admissible in court, but they're useful for something else. Leverage." Kamari raised her eyebrows. "Leverage?" "Lathan is a senior director at a major firm. His reputation is everything. If these recordings were to find their way to the board, his colleagues, or his partners—" Ifeoma didn't finish, but the meaning was clear. "Blackmail?" "A negotiating position," Zalani corrected. "We're not trying to ruin him. We just want justice. The house for you and the kids. Proper child support, not the pennies he paid Ifeoma. And for him to leave us all alone." Kamari looked at these two women, so different, so unlikely, and felt a strange warmth. They could have hated each other, competed, sought revenge. Instead, they had united against a common enemy. "There's one more thing," she said quietly. "My children, Kwame and Amandla. I don't want them to know the truth about their father, not yet. They're too young." Ifeoma covered Kamari's hand with hers. "When Lathan and I divorced, Tariq was 8. I wanted to protect him too, to hide the truth. But children feel a lie. Tariq figured out eventually that his father left for another woman, and he resented me for trying to hide it." "What are you suggesting?" "The truth. Not all at once, not in detail. But the core. Mommy and Daddy won't be living together anymore. Daddy did some bad things. Mommy and Daddy both love you, but in different ways." Kamari rubbed her temples. "I don't know if I can. Amandla loves him so much." "Amandla will adapt," Ifeoma said softly. "Children are resilient, much more than we think. The main thing is to give them stability and love. The rest will follow." They talked until evening, discussing every detail, every step. When Lathan returned from his mother's, Kamari would meet him calmly, showing nothing. She would give him a few days to make his move, and then the conversation. "What if he tries to deny everything?" Kamari asked. "You show him the recordings, the photos, the statements." Zalani shrugged. "You can't argue with facts." "And if he gets aggressive?" Ifeoma and Zalani exchanged a look. "Lathan never laid a hand on me," Ifeoma said. "At least, he never did back then. He's a manipulator, a liar, but not a violent man. Still, as a precaution, the lawyer suggests recording the conversation and alerting the neighbors." Kamari nodded. The plan was ready. All that was left was to wait. As she was leaving, she stopped at the door. "Ifeoma, thank you for everything. You could have turned me away. You could have laughed at my problems. Instead, you're helping." Ifeoma shook her head. "I'm not helping you. I'm helping your children. They aren't to blame for any of this, just like my Tariq wasn't. Children shouldn't have to suffer for the sins of their fathers. Kamari drove home thinking about the future. It was foggy, uncertain, terrifying. But for the first time in days, she felt a quiet, steady resolve. Lathan was coming back the day after tomorrow. She had 2 days to prepare, 2 days to say goodbye to her old life and begin a new one. Lathan returned on Sunday evening. Kamari heard the SUV door slam, heard the kids shouting, heard his heavy footsteps on the porch. She stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, and waited. "Mommy!" Amandla burst in first, running to hug her. "We missed you so much. I got you a seashell, look!" Kamari knelt down and pulled her daughter close. In those few days, she had almost forgotten how her girl's hair smelled, like sunshine, river water, and childhood. "It's a beautiful shell, baby, the most beautiful one." Kwame walked in calmly, acting like a grown-up. 11 years old, no longer a child, not yet a teenager. He gave her a quick, embarrassed hug. "Hey, Mom, everything okay at home?" "Everything's fine, son. Everything's fine." Then Lathan walked in, tanned and relaxed, with a carefree smile. It was as if nothing had happened, as if his secret life wasn't crumbling around him. "Hey, sunshine." He leaned in to kiss her, but Kamari pulled away. "Kids, go to your rooms and unpack. Your dad and I need to talk." Something in her voice made Kwame pause. He looked at his mother, then at his father, but said nothing. He took his sister by the hand and led her upstairs. Lathan frowned. "What's going on?" Kamari walked silently to the table, picked up the folder of documents, and handed it to him. Lathan opened it, and his face changed with every page. First confusion, then worry, then fear. "Where did you get this?" "It doesn't matter where. What matters is that it's the truth." He tossed the folder onto the table like it was a poisonous snake. "This is nonsense, fabricated. Someone's trying to drive a wedge between us." "Lathan, I talked to Ifeoma. I talked to Solani. I heard the recordings of your conversations." He went pale. For the first time in all their years, Kamari saw him truly shaken, cornered. "My mother," he whispered. "This was my mother. She never loved me." "Don't you dare!" Kamari raised her voice. "Don't you dare blame your mother for what you've done. She covered for you for 12 years, kept your secrets, tolerated your lies. And you were going to walk out on us, on me, on the kids, to run off with some girl and start over." "Kamari, listen. No, you listen." She felt everything she had bottled up over the last few days pouring out. "For 12 years, I was the perfect wife. I cleaned, I cooked, I raised your children. I believed every word you said. And all that time, you were laughing at me behind my back, calling me weak, saying you didn't need the kids." Lathan stepped back. "I didn't mean it like that." "I heard the recording, Lathan. Every word. Amandla whines, Kwame is okay, but whatever. Those are our kids. Your kids. And you're talking about them like they're baggage." She gasped for air, gripping the back of a chair. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Lathan stood in the middle of the room, slumped over, looking 10 years older. The mask of the perfect husband had cracked and fallen away, revealing what was underneath: emptiness, ego, and fear. "What do you want?" he finally asked. His voice was hoarse, hollow. "A divorce. I'm keeping the house for me and the kids. You'll pay real child support, not the scraps you gave Ifeoma. And you're out of our lives." "Out? I won't see the kids?" "You can see them if they want to, but I won't force them. If Kwame and Amandla decide they don't want anything to do with you, that's their right." Lathan sat on the sofa, head in his hands. "Kamari, I know you're angry, but let's talk about this rationally. I was wrong. I admit it. But we can fix this. For the kids." "For the kids?" She laughed bitterly. You remember the kids now? You who siphoned money to your mistress for 3 years instead of saving for their college? You who planned to leave them without a home? I would have paid support. Just like you did for Tariq? A handout once a year for his birthday? Kamari shook her head. No, Lathan, I'm done. I don't believe another word you say, and I never will. She walked to the door and opened it. Leave. Today. Now. You can get your things later when the kids aren't home. Lathan looked up. There were tears in his eyes, real or faked. She couldn't tell anymore. Kamari, please, give me a chance. I'll change, I swear. I'll leave Sia, Zalani, all of them. We'll start over, like it was before. She looked at him, the man she had loved for 12 years, the man she'd built a life with, and felt nothing, just emptiness, a scorched earth where love used to be. Before is gone, Lathan. You killed it with your own hands. He stood up and walked to the door. On the threshold, he turned back. You'll regret this, alone with 2 kids and no money. I'm not alone. Kamari stood tall. I have friends, real ones, people you hurt and betrayed, and together, we're going to be just fine. The door closed. Kamari leaned her back against it and slowly slid to the floor. The tears flowed down her cheeks, but these were different, cleansing, freeing. Mom? She looked up. Kwame was standing on the stairs, with Amandla hiding behind him. They had heard everything. Mom, did Dad leave? Amandla asked in a trembling voice. Not for good. Kamari stood up, walked to her children, and hugged them both. Yes, baby. Dad left, but I'm here. I'll always be here with you. Kwame said nothing. He just pressed closer to his mother. He was old enough to understand, and young enough to be hurt by it. We'll be okay, Kamari whispered, kissing the tops of their heads. Together, we'll be just fine. A year passed. Kamari sat on the porch, watching Amandla play in the yard with a ginger kitten, a gift from Ifeoma. Kwame was at a friend's house working on a school project. They had kept the house. The lawyer Ifeoma found turned out to be a warrior. The court had taken into account the hidden accounts, the transfers to mistresses, and the recordings. Lathan had tried to fight, but he was powerless against the facts. Now he lived in a rented apartment on the other side of town. He and Sia had split up after 2 months. She found out the truth and wouldn't forgive him. Zalani had vanished from his life, too. Lathan was alone with his ghosts and his memories. The kids saw their father once a month. Amandla had gradually adjusted, though she cried every night at first. Kwame remained distant, speaking to his father politely but coldly. The boy had not forgiven him. Maybe in time he would, maybe not. Kamari had gone back to full-time work. Ifeoma helped with the kids. It was a strange friendship, the ex-wife and the new ex-wife of the same man, but it worked. Ifeoma had become like the older sister Kamari never had. Tariq came by sometimes, bringing gifts for his brother and sister. Kwame looked at him with awe, the big brother he never knew he had. Amandla was still shy, but she let him hug her now. Ms. Eloise visited every weekend. Her relationship with Kamari had grown warmer. Their shared ordeal had brought them closer than years of family dinners ever had. The mother-in-law still hadn't forgiven her son, but she loved her grandkids with a fierce, desperate devotion. "Mom, look!" Amandla shouted. "The kitten caught a butterfly!" Kamari smiled and waved to her daughter. Life went on, a different life, new and unfamiliar, but her own. She took out her phone and opened a message from Ifeoma. "Come over Saturday. We're baking pies. Tariq is bringing his fiancé to meet us." A fiancé? That meant a wedding soon, then children. Tariq would be a father. She wondered what kind of father he'd be, like his own or someone completely different. Kamari believed he'd be different. He was raised by a mother who taught him the most important thing. Love without honesty isn't love. It's just a beautiful lie. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Amandla ran toward the house, clutching the kitten to her chest. Somewhere over the fence, neighbor kids were laughing. An ordinary evening, an ordinary life. But Kamari knew its price now, because she had almost lost it. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her heart felt quiet and steady. For the first time in years, truly steady. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.